Hello everyone, and welcome to Season 7, Episode 23 of Pro Wrestling's Top 50. I'm your host, Travis McNeil, and today we continue our countdown of the top 50 matches in CHIKARA history with match number 28 on our list, which is the Atomicos match between the team of Mike Quackenbush, Jigsaw, Shane Storm, and Milano Collection AT against the Kings of Wrestling group of Chris Hero, Claudio Castagnoli, Gran Akuma, and Icarus, from the CHIKARA Aniversario Delta event held on May the 26th of 2006. This is a match that I will always fondly look back on. This to me is the golden age of CHIKARA. And it's funny that I think a lot of people would argue, that 2010, 2011, 2012 period was kind of when CHIKARA was maybe at its peak popularity. You had the wild success of the big King of Trios tournaments and, them traveling all over the country and bringing in all of these imports from, international and Japanese federations. Maybe that was when CHIKARA had its most exposure. But for me, that 2005, 2006, that kind of peak, Kings of Wrestling era CHIKARA, it was my favorite. And this match is just a great encapsulation of that time period. This was an Aniversario main event. It's a bit of an elongated match. It goes, in that half-hour-ish kind of time frame. But it's so well done. To me, CHIKARA, their peak matches, and maybe, as we go through this list, we'll have a lot of one-on-one matches and tag matches and things like that, that are kind of at the top of the list. But for me, there was nothing they did better on a consistent basis than their trios and their Atomicos matches, those multi-man matches. And this one is just loaded with star power at that time. You have the incredible heel faction that was the Kings of Wrestling. Heroes, years-long rivalry with Quackenbush. They each have their sides. But the kind of underlying story in this match is the budding grudge between Icarus and Jigsaw that would ultimately lead to them meeting in a mask versus hair match 2 months after this event. This match, though, it's so great. Its structure is really, really good. And it's funny because, it's got all of these layers and these intertwining stories to it. But, unlike a lot of the matches in this countdown that have, all of this historical impact to CHIKARA, this match doesn't really have it. It's just, one of these matches in a long string of multi-man matches between the Kings of Wrestling faction and Quackenbush and friends. But again, it's one I look fondly back on. At the time, it was one of the better ones that they had done. Like I said, Aniversario main event gives it that little bit of extra juice. It's in Reading, Pennsylvania. I love, nothing more than the Reading, CHIKARA events. I've been to the old Riverside in Reading, so it's very nostalgic and, a place that I hold near and dear to my heart, this era of CHIKARA. But this match is so good. They really do a lot of smart things with how they build to the heat throughout this match. So in the early goings, they kind of run through all of these one-on-one sequences, and the Technicos, the faces, dominate every single one of them. And they establish this right out of the gates where they have Milano Collection AT, who is such an incredibly underrated performer. Depending on how long you've been a wrestling fan, you might not be super familiar with Milano Collection, or you may be more familiar with him as a New Japan Pro Wrestling Japanese language commentator. But he is phenomenal. He was someone that came up through the Toryumon system, protege of Ultimo Dragon. CHIKARA brought him stateside, for the first real time in 2005, and here in 2006. And he had about a little more than a year-long run in CHIKARA that was so great. And I'm so happy he got to do that and work, a lot of the top indie guys of his heyday. And these are wrestlers that were already fantastic, like Hero, like Claudio, but I'd argue developed so much more just through working with a guy like Milano, who, really took the best of kind of that, lucha libre style, but also, that Japanese, that pro res style, that's where the lucha res, kind of, that Toryumon style really came from. And like I said, Milano was a product of that. And this match is a great showcase of him. And really early on, the match starts with him and Gran Akuma, and Milano ties Akuma up in a knot, and it gets quickly broken up. And what I loved about that is there was the the really famous Torneo Cibernetico that CHIKARA did, the one that went over 100 minutes, that was ultimately won by Gran Akuma in late 2005. There was a sequence in that match where Milano, like, back-to-back tapped out two members of the Kings of Wrestling team. I think it was Hero and Icarus, if my brain can remember. But he tapped him out with the AT lock, his finishing move, like, back-to-back. And it was, like, a big deal, you know, kind of out of nowhere in the middle of this match. So the fact that, you know, they established Milano as this guy to be, like, really feared immediately in the match, you know, by tying up Akuma and needing to make that save right away was really cool. And again, you know, it shows the respect that CHIKARA had for someone like Milano Collection AT when they brought him over. But like I said, we run through all of these sequences. You know, Jig wins a sequence over Claudio, and Quack wins a sequence over Icarus, and Storm wins a sequence over Hero, and Milano over Hero, and Quack over Claudio, and so on and so forth, until eventually we get Jigsaw and Icarus in the ring together, and that grudge, you know, really starts to kind of shine through, and Jigsaw just pounds away on Icarus. And it really felt like almost like a mini Cibernetico, just running through those batting orders and everybody getting some time in there. But the heat sequence in this match is just as good as that opening period. And what I loved about it is they just extended it on and on and on and on, but they were able to keeping it fresh. So what would happen is the Kings of Wrestling, they would, you know, beat down one member of the Technico side, and they'd have all of these great, you know, double teams and triple teams and quadruple teams and everything like that, you know, going on. But every time they'd really work down one of the faces, they'd accidentally knock the Technico out to the floor. And that would force a tag under Lucha Libre rules, which are, you know, done in CHIKARA. But then when the next face would come in, they would immediately get pounced on by all four of the Ritos, and they would take back over and extend the heat sequence. But it gave the crowd somebody new to cheer for. Sometimes in wrestling matches, you know, when you really tried to build that heat, the crowd can lose interest. But this was really smart by cycling in a new face each time. It was someone new for the crowd to get behind. And every time, you know, you'd get that quick little glimmer of a house of fire, right? That rug would be pulled out from the crowd again, and it would just build that heat up more and more and more. And it was really great. And something that I love about this era of these CHIKARA multi-mans is both Hero and Quack are so good on the ring aprons. Just like, one, chirping each other, right, and trash talking, but two, like, building encouragement for their team. And Quack is so good, you know, trying to rally his guys, be like, get to the floor, make a tag, you know, come on, fight back, like all of this great stuff. And then Hero's just the polar opposite of just being so dastardly and dirty and like manipulative. So there's a point where, like, you know, Shane Storm's beating on Gran Akuma and Hero's like, he took your mask, because Shane Storm beat Akuma in a mask versus mask match. So again, just, you know, almost like manipulating his own guys to try to, like, you know, boost them up to get angrier and fight harder and fight dirtier. And it's just this really good juxtaposition of Hero and Quack in these opposite corners, you know, kind of encouraging their troops. Because really, ultimately, you know, even though there's that Jigsaw Icarus feud here, all of these matches are still really much about Hero versus Quack. We get, you know, Jigsaw kind of makes this little bit of a comeback. Again, you know, I'm going to keep so much praise on Chris Hero for this match, but there's a point where, like, they do a toss-up arm drag where he tries to, like, shoot Jigsaw up, and Jig's supposed to come down with an arm drag, and they blow it, right? There's no easier way to put it. They botch the spot, but Hero doesn't miss a beat, and this is, to me, is the sign of a truly great professional wrestler. We see so much, especially in independent wrestling, or, you know, guys like in NXT that are, you know, inexperienced, that are developing, where, you know, they'll blow a spot and then you kind of get that, like, deer in the headlights, like, oh my God, what do we do now? We messed up. Like, where are we in our, you know, rehearsed sequence? But Hero doesn't miss a beat, and he immediately uses that to pounce on Jigsaw, continue to beat him down, and build that heat up more. Very reminiscent of, like, Liger and Great Sasuke in the 94 J Cup, right? The blown springboard, and Liger, you know, making more out of that, where it almost adds to the match. And that's exactly what happens here with that blown arm drag. But this ends up building to a hot tag to Milano, again, playing off the start of the match of Milano kind of being the one that you should be fearful of. Because, you know, the Kings try everything that's worked throughout the match, and they, you know, try to kind of jump him and beat him down, but he weathers the storm, and he keeps countering and avoiding and causing, like, heel miscommunication spots and everything like that. And it's really, really great. He takes out everybody, which is fantastic, and it leads to the match just completely breaking down. Guys hitting all of their finishing moves and countering all their moves because all 8 guys know each other so well. And it leads into, Shane Storm eventually hitting that Japanese move on Gran Akuma for the 3 count. It gives the Technicos a big win on an Aniversario weekend, and it's everything you as a fan could want. One thing that I did want to mention with this match, though, is there's a little glimpse near the end when everything's kind of breaking down where Milano and Claudio get a sequence together. And it breaks my heart that they didn't get a big time one-on-one singles match in CHIKARA, because it would have been amazing. They might have had a singles match in ROH. Milano was working ROH too at the end of 05. And I really should have researched it, but I'm thinking of it on the fly when I'm doing this video now, where they just had insane chemistry kind of right off the hop. And so what ended up happening is I mentioned, that Jigsaw and Icarus hair versus mask match at a show called The Crushing Weight of Mainstream Ignorance in Hellertown, Pennsylvania. That was a show that I was at live, and they ended up doing 3 singles matches coming out of this 8-man tag. They did, obviously, Jig and Icarus as the main event, but they also did Akuma versus Quack and Hero versus Storm. And Claudio just randomly wrestled in the opener against Equinox. And there's a part of me, now 16 years later that's like, man, I wonder if it was supposed to be Claudio versus Milano, just to kind of stick with that theme of the 4 singles matches. And if it was, I could have potentially seen that live, and I'm really disappointed by it. Now, just some salt in the wounds of, watching this match back, wishing we got that singles, and then being like, man, maybe I could have even seen it live. But it's a shame it didn't happen, but it's all good. At least we got that little glimpse here. We get, a hot kind of closing angle with Jigsaw and Icarus kind of getting into a pull-apart brawl. Like I said, that eventually led to Mask versus Hair, where Jigsaw would beat Icarus and force him to shave his head. A really kind of just weird sign of the times with this match is Quack, cuts this big promo thanking the crowd for 4 years of CHIKARA, post-match. And he mentions being able to go see a midnight screening of X-Men 3. And that just really kind of puts, the date stamp on this match. And if you watch the X-Men movies at the time, you'll know, a lot of people don't look too fondly back on X-Men 3. But just kind of a funny little footnote on this match. And this match is so much fun. Like I said, it maybe doesn't have the historical significance of a lot of the matches on this countdown, but it's so fun. It's a great period. It's what CHIKARA does best, those Atomico matches. You've got 8 really strong personalities with all of these intertwined stories with great action for a half hour. Really, what more could you ask for? You can watch this match, of course, on independentwrestling.tv. Subscribe to my channel here on YouTube so that you never miss a video. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Wrestling50. And please join me again next time as we continue to count down Pro Wrestling's Top 50.